in the day that the Lord God made the earth and heavens is a completely different era. It's written in a completely different era. It's actually the second part of verse 4. All of this is written before the first chapter.
Okay, so this is older basically.
So that's, yeah, what
This
we're
is
moving
probably
into is
why
going to be
it's
older, and that's why there's a lot of back and forth. So you're going to see some overlaps and see things
okay.
where like one was paraphrasing, but the other one goes into detail. That's kind of how I'm seeing it.
Okay. From what we read, I think what stands out to me, I think in the later chapters we might get confused as to what is heaven versus earth, but here to me he's the first chapter is saying that obviously he put Adam and Eve on earth, as in earth was heaven or Eden. I'm sorry, they're different. Earth was the Garden of Eden. And another thing that becomes interesting later on to me is that we'll come back to this probably is he says that this is going to be your food. He gives them seeds, he gives them all these creatures for food, so they have to feed themselves and rule over these creatures. And then later on in the chapters, I think it says now you're punished, now you have to be self-reliant and feed yourself. You're like, wait, I thought we were already doing that. you know?
Um, yeah, I think it has a little bit more to do with the working on the land there. I think more so than feeding yourself. I
I
think it
mean,
has
it says I'm giving this to you for food, the seeds and the plants, and right, like the creatures.
right, but those things may have, like in the Garden of Eden, right? Those things may have been okay. So this is where,
So they were not
because
laboring; it was just somehow
correct.
appearing on their plate.
Correct. Not appearing on the plate, but like it was readily available to eat, right? Maybe they weren't cooking, radishes. They were just growing
Like they didn't have to
abundantly.
plow the land to sow the seed.
Right. There you go. Exactly
It
that.
was
Exactly
just
that.
magically
The
just.
earth was replenishing itself. But see, this is where, so it starts to get really, it gets really uh it's hard to relate to that idea, right? Oh, like food just popping up from the ground and I have to
No,
do any
it's
work and
not
it just
hard to
happened.
relate when somebody hands it to you.
Right,
If I
but
sit here and I have a servant who brings me coffee and I'm like, look at that coffee that just appeared. How fancy,
but see,
right?
this is where I think it's easy to step into more of a, let's look at a spiritual understanding of that, right? That when you were residing in that Garden of Eden or that place with God, when you were residing in that realm where God exists, then everything, all thoughts are pure, all feelings, all emotions. So not necessarily physical food as much as it is spiritual food, right? So all of these like wisdom and knowledge and love and compassion and righteousness and good judgment and all of these things are readily available. But now that you've been cursed, right, you have to work to get that. You have to work to get wisdom. You have to work to get knowledge. You have to work
Well, I
to
have
get
to
to these
push
good
back on
feelings.
that because they seem pretty unwise and ignorant, Adam and Eve.
You're talking about going, well, that's because the fall happened at the knowledge of good and evil. So and we haven't got
They
there yet. We
literally
haven't gotten
become
there.
wiser
We
when
can't get
they.
into that right now.
Yes,
No, it's
exactly.
that's
Yes,
next episode.
you're right. You're right. You're right. Let's not get into that. And I like that we're taking very different approaches. I'm going to constantly rationalize it into the concrete reality, which is bizarre because normally I live in my head, and
Hmm.
not in the concrete reality. But
That's
to balance myself, I bring myself down. You, I feel like, are the opposite in a way.
absolutely, yeah.
You mountain climb, you rock climb. You are so grounded in the concrete reality in your day to day life. Yet, when it comes to the spirituality, you're doing the what I do in my day to day life. It's
Yes, well,
like reverse.
it's absolutely that way because everything in my life is very literal. That's why I went to the history first because I'm like, okay, these things are actually like tangible. Like I can actually touch them and see them and even though it's all interpretive, but this is how my mind works, very analytical. Like I'm so grounded. But I'll tell you what really changed it, and I'm hoping that we do get to that point one day. And I'm not going to spoil this story because when it comes, it'll be really nice. But I once was reading a book that I came across, it's a book within the Bible. We will definitely be reading it. That I came into contact with it in a very special way, and uh, I felt this spiritual energy speaking directly. Like I could feel it so strongly that I was so aware that I was like, oh wow, spirituality is also very tangible. Like it's also something that I can touch and feel and experience. But it is absolutely something that I cannot explain to someone else. I cannot tell you what it feels like to have divine intervention in the mind. Like I cannot explain that to you at all. It would never make sense. I can say these
Well,
words, but what they mean, like the actual revelatory feeling, is something that I can't describe.
yeah, and most likely I will relate to it based on my own experiences of those moments, and sometimes I might just downplay them into an aha moment, but those are those moments sometimes when just all of a sudden a rush of download happens and you just immediately just get up wiser, and because you just understood something so profound that everything just started coming together.
Right.
And those are great moments, and I think down the line, at some point we'll have talks about maybe some of those experiences, because there's just, some people call it vision, some people call it vivid dreams. I have both the hyper rational version of those names and the and the spiritual versions of those experiences, but I have experienced them, which is what has constantly made me think like, okay, I really need to get into this and stop rejecting it, because I can't explain it. It's like the human arrogance and ignorance that just wants to be in control, and anything that's just completely outside of my control that I can't explain is just like rejected. And I see this in humans all the time. I think this is the reason why we have atheists who just flat out laugh at
Hmm.
anyone who says anything spiritual, instead of being like, maybe this person is having a different experience than me. I
Right.
felt that way about yoga.
Mm.
Like, I used to be that arrogant, ignorant person who actually would mock yogis and be like, oh my God, these people just, namaste. And I was just like, I hated it. And every time I tried it, I was just like, oh my God, these people are nuts. How do you sit here? And it wasn't until I had surgery on both of my legs and I was out of commission for a good 6 months on a wheelchair. Then when I started recovering and started like wanting to get into exercise, the only thing I could perceive to be able to do was some light yoga, right, to
Hmm.
beginning. So I was forced in a way. My legs were chopped so that I would be forced to to this method, and oh my God, that transformed a lot in me. And I know that Christians frown upon yoga as if it's some kind of like
A cult.
anti-Christian.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to me it's just ridiculous. It's just the healthiest
Yeah.
things I think I had ever decided to do.
Right. Well,
But
yoga also though is there's several forms. Yoga encapsulates a huge idea. It's not just the postures and positions.
even if you bring it still down to literal rational sense, it teaches you the most healthy thing you can do for this body, this vessel, to take you through life, which is having the proper posture, having everything aligned so that you can breathe properly
Yeah.
and not be anxious, not be stressed, not be, just stress literally causes all sorts of
Oh, it's the worst
every,
thing.
it's the worst thing in our health, and yet we just ignore the best tool given to us, one of the best tools, because I think fasting and nutrition, correct nutrition, is
Yeah.